Welcome, all of you, to this WorldDAB event, DAB Plus, at the heart of hybrid, creating a better listening experience in the car with broadcast and IP. The future of audio in the car is evolving with connectivity, voice control, large color displays, and apps. Decisions made today shape how radio will look in the vehicles of tomorrow. Within WorldDAB, broadcasters and vehicle manufacturers are working together to implement solutions that keep radio prominent while building a great radio experience for the listener. In this 2-hour webinar, experts on hybrid radio will share their insights on how broadcasters can turn threats into opportunities, develop new content and business models, keeping radio prominent in the car dash of tomorrow. And why hybrid radio, underpinned by DAB+, is a firm foundation on which to build radio's future in the car. We aim to give new broadcasters to DAB+ a better understanding of how important hybrid radio in the car is. We also aim to encourage collaboration between companies already working on radio in the car, create an experience by talking with one voice to vehicle manufacturers. We will hear from WorldDAB and EBU members about the projects they are working on, which are related to hybrid radio in the car and include DAB+, giving clarity on how the different organizations and companies fit into this hybrid world. And if you are from the car industry, we want to show you where and how WorldDAB and EBU are creating collaboration between the two sectors, radio and automotive. This is an event focused on DAB+ as part of the hybrid experience. You are invited to join our much wider automotive event in June. This event brings together OEMs to speak about what they want from the broadcast industry as a whole. Before we start, here's a little housekeeping information for you. This session is live, but we plan to release the full recorded version of this event on our YouTube channel, WorldDAB, so you can watch on catch-up. After each presentation and during the panel discussion, you can ask the speakers and panelists questions. Please type these into the Q&A box you find at the bottom of your screen, and we can answer as many as we can. For further information on all of our speakers and their companies, or if you have any questions, you can find out more on the worlddab.org website. And now to start our session, we will begin with our event partner EBU, and presenting for the EBU is Ben Poor, Project Manager EBU, Technology and Innovation.
Thank you, Jackie, for that wonderful introduction. It's my pleasure to be the first to try and share a screen with Zoom, so please do bear with me 1 second. As Jackie mentioned, I am the project manager for digital radio at the European Broadcasting Union, their Technology and Innovation Department, and it's our pleasure to partner with WorldDAB for this event. We've long been partners of WorldDAB in many different things, including the subject of hybrid and automotive, so it's great to continue that relationship. So I'd just like to take you through a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but a few notes on how EBU and its members are supporting a better user experience in the car with hybrid, and also, I guess, some more personal reflections and thoughts about where we might want to go in the future. So if I do this, fantastic. A little bit about the EBU. So the EBU is the world's leading alliance of public service media. So our members include some of the very biggest names in broadcasting, like the BBC, France Télévisions, RAI, and others, and also many radio-only organizations or TV-only organizations. We actually have 115 member organizations covering 56 countries. One of the things that always astounds me about this is that our members provide content in 159 languages and serve a potential audience of over 1 billion people. So the reach of content that our members have is truly quite enormous. So that's why it's important for us and our members to collaborate amongst ourselves, but also with players outside of the EBU membership to make change happen. So a few notes about the EBU and hybrid. We've been involved in the creation of the core DAB standards some years ago now, alongside other EBU members such as the IRT and the BBC. Obviously, the BBC, one of the first companies to start broadcasting the DAB signal. We also host the current WorldDAB organization in our Swiss HQ. We were also one of the founding members of Radio DNS, which is the open standards organization for hybrid radio, who we'll be talking a little bit later on. We therefore represent our members in both WorldDAB and Radio DNS, as well as working with other organizations. So really, we try and collaborate as widely as possible to spread the best interests of our members and the wider industry as well. We also support our members directly with both DAB and hybrid radio implementations, some of which I'll talk about a little bit later on. We also work in politics and strategy. For instance, we helped lobby for the implementation of DAB receivers in automotive in the European Electronic Communications Code, which began to take effect at the beginning of this year and mandates broadcast digital radio reception in cars sold across Europe, regardless of whether DAB is actually being broadcast in that country or not. And also we bring together our members to collaborate, align on strategy, and create projects together in our groups, including the EBU's Connected Cars and Devices group, the chair of which is the BBC's Eli Sessions, who will be talking a little bit later on. So, a few notes. One of the things that we use as a tool to bringing together member strategy is what we call recommendations. And I wanted to again draw attention to one of our recommendations, which was now published a couple of years ago, actually, which is around digital radio deployment in Europe. And this sums up our thoughts based on the thoughts of the EBU membership. So we're speaking as one voice to say to other members and also the wider industry what we think is the recommended way to go for a number of different key topics in broadcasting media. And this one covers digital radio deployment. I've extracted a few key nuggets just to digest and set the context for the rest of this conversation. Number one is that digital radio broadcasting be established using DAB+. So it's a concrete recommendation that broadcasting is done digitally using the DAB+ standard in Europe and our membership. The digitization be accompanied by additional features to ensure a rich and dynamic radio user experience, including textual and visual program associated data alongside service and program information. That one's a bit of a long sentence, but essentially digital audio is the first step, but with DAB+, you can also add additional information such as visual slides, dynamic text giving now playing information, program information, which is of real demonstrable value to users. It's something that sets it apart from other broadcasting platforms. And also, more importantly to this conversation, additional hybrid services be deployed alongside linear radio services to enable a seamless user experience using the radio DNS standards. So this is our statement that hybrid using open standards is something that we recommend to our members and others as well. And again, I'll talk a little bit more about why a little bit later on. So I wanted to kind of start from first principles and lead us into a scenario of why we think hybrid is important and what we're doing. First thing to say is, again, drawing on some research that my colleagues in the EBU have done in our MAS department on trust in media. And this was a year or two ago. It shows that radio is a resilient medium, actually more popular than ever, I would say. Linear radio is a key part of daily media habits. That hasn't waned. There is also still significant radio listening that takes place in the car. So on average across our members, 25% of total hours is done in the car. Obviously that varies depending on which countries and seems to be driven by traffic jams and traffic conditions, strangely enough. Radio is the most trusted media for European audiences. So here's a bit of an infographic that shows that social networks are in general the least trusted form of media, and radio is the most trusted form of media. And I think that's also key to what we're doing as an industry, to say that actually the radio product has a real demonstrable, clear value to audiences. It's still loved and it provides a societal value. But of course, there is growing non-linear and on-demand consumption. We're not just in a linear world. So really hybrid has a key role to play to keep radio key in people's minds and also appreciated by audiences. So the key thing about reaching audiences is distribution. And I've tried to sum that up in the phrase of the best content can have no impact unless it reaches an audience. Other people have expressed that statement in different ways, but this is how I'm doing it. So let's take it again from first principles. Radio, it's the content that audiences want. Broadcast is the most efficient way to reach audiences. Now, obviously, in these statements, I've slightly compressed the thinking here due to the lack of space, but broadcasting is a way of reaching mass audiences with a single signal. It's a way of reaching mass audiences with the same audio signal. DAB digital is the most efficient way to broadcast these radio services, and that's based on terms of spectral efficiency and on-air costs, and we did a study about that some years ago now. Leading on from there, hybrid is the best way of creating a better user experience. So using broadcast plus IP makes for a range of new and engaging user experiences that are more engaging, that are more interesting, that are more dynamic, that give the user more information and more value, and are also more a key component of what can be done in the connected car. So back to the subject of this whole webinar, DAB at the heart of hybrid. We think that DAB can provide the best of broadcast. It enables more services, more data and flexibility than possible solely with analog. With DAB+, you can reconfigure services, you can add different services as and when you want to, and you can fit more services into a piece of spectrum. It's also a much more capable partner to IP-based services. So this brings us back to DAB being a key complementary partner to hybrid radio and IP-based services. For instance, data services can be broadcast over DAB for broader reach. So again, using that single service, using the broadcast paradigm, we reach multiple different devices more quickly in one way. And also reliability. DAB broadcasts cover entire countries in a way that has yet to be reached in many territories with IP connectivity. And also, more importantly, not every device is connected. So broadcast can be received by, should we say, cheaper, simpler, more traditional devices that are not IP connected. And then connected devices can use this broadcast information in DAB. So it kind of gives us this stepping stone to the hybrid user experience. They can be used to locate higher bandwidth IP services using hybrid. So slideshow, text, service, and program information. So essentially, we're using the broadcast to give you the core of what you need, and then using IP to give you the rest of what you want. So DAB really is accessible, reliable, free to air, more importantly, digital audio broadcasts, which can be paired alongside IP services, creating the best user experiences for audiences. So going back to what the EBU membership are doing. It's a bit of a shopping list. There's a lot of things going on. Here's a few highlights. We're actively engaging services in hybrid radio, particularly in the connected car. So I would say one of the key things in our members' minds these days is how do radio services, how are they experienced in the connected car? It's an opportunity, it's a challenge, and it's something that our members are putting a lot of effort and energy into in a collaborative way amongst our membership. They're also doing some things which obviously we've been recommending and others have been recommending for many years, creating visual slideshow, creating dynamic text feeds for those implementing DAB. Not every member implements DAB, but for those that do, we help them do that in the most effective way. Obviously, publishing hybrid radio metadata, they can do this from their own platform, as many members do. We also have our own platform that we provide to the EBU membership. Jackie's project available on GitHub, if you're interested, and also through third parties. So third parties, some of which we'll be speaking today, publish hybrid radio information to be then served to devices. We also engage with service providers through various different groups internally, and also have platforms, conversations with platforms like Google and Amazon, which is very key to strategy. There is probably a focus on connected car apps as well. So members writing their own apps to be used on existing and new car platforms. But there's definitely an interest in allowing those apps also to control the broadcast receiver. So that's something that has been covered in the Nab Pilot Project, which was presented recently at the EBU's Digital Radio Summit, which is quite an interesting project and which some of our members are involved with. Also, some members participate in their country's Radio Player project, and Lawrence Harrison from Radio Player will be speaking a little bit later on. And the thing is, I think the key reflection is there are many different routes of broadcasts to take a step forward and enable a hybrid radio experience, some of which I mentioned here, but some of which I haven't mentioned. I think that's a real challenge for broadcasters, how to get global reach with hybrid. Car manufacturers tend to think globally. Different platforms and different broadcasts have maybe a narrower view than that. So for instance, we can imagine a service provider in the US called Banana In Europe, that might be called peach, uses some different standards and techniques. In Asia, that might be called avocado. Africa, grapes. And you can see there's a kind of a plethora of different platforms and service providers and ways of getting hybrid interconnected cars and other devices across the world. Other smaller providers, different countries doing different things, some providing their own platforms, for instance, some having bilateral agreements with specific device manufacturers. And there are also the spectre of the larger platforms like Google, Apple, and Alexa, which are obviously making more inroads into the connected car these days. So there's a whole host of different ways of accessing and getting engaged with the hybrid radio connected car experience. One of the key principles of how we deal with things in the EBU is open standards, because open means open in its ways. We've done things in the past, for instance, with DDB, with HBB-TV. Again, we're involved in the DAB specification, which is an open standard, and also radio DNS. This is important to EBU members and the wider industry to ensure an interoperable and competitive market. Proprietary interfaces and formats may solve the immediate problem, but as we multiply, that becomes more complex and potentially more fragile, and that's something to avoid. An open standard developed in a transparent process and held by a recognized international standards body is more sustainable. And I've kind of extracted the technical definition of what an open standard there is. Transparency and openness means that everyone can participate in that. It's open to everyone. People can see why decisions were made, and certainly things that we're speaking about with some of the large platforms as well. That's not to say open standards exist in a bubble. They can exist alongside bilateral agreements and platform-specific enhancements. So,
and I'm just flagging you a little bit that time is running up, even for Q&A, but fortunately we have another panel discussion where people can ask you questions.
Yep, that's fine. I'm almost to the end. I think I was getting too excited in the early part. So a few takeaways. There's a lot of competition in radio. It's a thriving medium. Free-to-air broadcast is important still for reaching mass audiences, and DAB is an important part for that. DAB is the perfect fit to complement a modern hybrid radio experience, which is becoming increasingly complex, especially in the connected car. And we think that open accessible standards have served radio superbly well in the past, including DAB, and should continue to do so in the future. So apologies for being slightly over time there, and that's the end.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ben. It's really good to hear your thoughts on behalf of the EBU and your members. And due to time, I will skip the Q&A for now, but we can always do that a little bit later. So now it's the turn of Radio DNS with Nick Piggott, Project Director of Radio DNS.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Jackie. And I'm afraid I don't have a fruit-based analogy to give you to follow on from Ben. So I'm sorry if that is a disappointment. I wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you about what Radio DNS does. And I thought probably the easiest way of doing that was to start with an environment we're all very familiar with, which is the internet. And we're all very familiar with websites like LinkedIn and Wikipedia, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. These are all really successful businesses that have built themselves on top of internet technology. But every one of those businesses needs consumers to have some sort of enabling technology to access it. And in this case, I picked on a bunch of web browsers. You can go and choose a web browser, and you can use your web browser. It could be Chrome, it could be Firefox, it could be Edge, to access those websites. And the reason that that all works is because of three organizations you may not ever have heard of. And those three organizations are W3C, IETF, and ECMA. And what W3C, IETF, and ECMA do is they create the standards for the internet. So W3C is the HTML and CSS standards. ECMA is the organization that creates something called ECMAScript, which you might know better as JavaScript. And the guys at IETF really are kind of the plumbers of the internet, because they are the people who define the HTTP and TCP/IP standards that actually make all those connections over the physical wires. So you can see at the bottom there, those three organizations are very quiet. They do a very effective job of standardizing the internet so that as any user connected at any point on the internet, I can use a browser of my choice and reach any one of a huge, virtually limitless number of businesses also connected to the internet. And it's that standardization that's broken us out from the very early days of the internet, where we had things like AOL, which was completely separate from the MSN network. And eventually everyone realized the smart thing to do to make everything grow faster and more sustainably was to sit down on one set of technologies. And that's what we see in today's modern web. So how does that correspond with where we are today in the hybrid radio environment? Well, let's take a slightly different view of this. There are people who make cars and there are drivers who drive cars, and that's what people primarily experience. They get into their car and they turn on the radio. But behind that radio, there's a whole load of supporting technology, and that supporting technology comes from people like Alpine or NXP or Radio Player or Xperia. And what we do underneath all of that is very similar, or in fact, almost identical to what WorldDAB do. We set the standards, and those standards are there to create interoperability so that any car manufacturer can buy from any tier 1 supplier, but the experience for the listener is the same. They get down, they sit in their car, they turn on the radio, it gives them a bunch of radio stations. They don't need to know what the intermediate technology provision behind that is. So WorldDAB standardizes DAB digital radio. In the analog world, the RDS forum standardize RDS, which is really important for making FM radio a bit richer than just analog. And what Radio DNS does is we create the technical standards for hybrid radio. So our main role in this ecosystem is actually pretty limited. So if you look at what we have, typically we have a broadcaster on one side and we have a listener on the other side. And in between the two, there's a whole bunch of technology, some of which is, in fact, most of which is not visible to the listener at all. So a radio station may choose to work with a third-party technical supplier to help them publish their content digitally. And a car manufacturer may choose to work with a technology supplier to help them acquire content and get it into the vehicle. And the role of Radio DNS is to provide interoperability between those two worlds so that every radio station can reach as many different manufacturers as possible, and every manufacturer can receive content from as many different radio stations as possible. And that's made possible because of that red line in the middle, which is standardized. Everything that appears on one side of that line, regardless of where it's come from, looks the same. And from a manufacturer point of view, you implement one interface and you can pull everything in from every broadcaster using the same standards. And it enables a huge amount of diversity and very, very quick growth without getting into complex interconnection problems. We also do a little bit more than just the technical stuff. We've understood that sometimes people don't have quite the same understanding of things like fair use. What is fair use of a radio station logo? So we also provide some guidelines and some standards around what fair use of radio station metadata looks like. And then we provide some tools to our members for things like test points. Is their system behaving the way they think it is? Is a manufacturer's system behaving the way they think it is? And that's important to make sure that systems are working as they have been described to people. That's kind of like an independent verification to say, it says it supports radio DNS, you can test it, yes it does. There's your stamp of approval. And you can see that in that flow, radio DNS is not actually involved practically at all. No data comes through us at all. We don't hold anything. We don't know anything about the radio stations actually. We're just there to standardize that flow of information. Our other main role is education, because we recognize that hybrid radio is a really new concept to a lot of people who have come from broadcast radio and are used to implementing things in the broadcast radio domain. And we tend to find ourselves answering kind of 4 questions in ascending order of priority. So the first question obviously is, why should we do hybrid radio at all? And our belief is that if you combine 2 complementary technologies in broadcast and IP, you can create an experience for the listener that is better than using each one in isolation. I also sometimes use the analogy of, we have a hammer and we have a screwdriver. We have the hammer of broadcast radio, we have the screwdriver of IP. If we're going to do a great job, we need to know how to use both tools together. The second question is, well, why use open standards? And the purpose of open standards is that they are durable. That means they last. They're not anchored to the success of one company. And they're interoperable, which gives you that huge scaling capability. And it also means it reduces the cost of implementation, because as a broadcaster, you implement one interface and everyone can attach to that. And as a manufacturer, you implement one interface and everyone can attach to that. It is a huge amount of saving in engineering complexity to use open standards. And we exist to accelerate the growth of hybrid radio and decrease the costs of implementing it. That's why we create the standards. That's the whole point of us being here, is to make things happen faster and cheaper for the people who are implementing hybrid radio, which is actually not us. And then inevitably people say, well, how do I implement hybrid radio? And the answer is actually there are a number of different ways. We support broadcasters, manufacturers and technology providers in working out the best way for them to implement our standards. And we do that with documentation and technical support. The reason that we're so close to WorldDAB is that actually we share common technical standards. And there's a very simple reason for that. Most of the functionality that listeners want is pretty standard between a delivery over broadcast radio or a delivery over IP. The application is the same. People want visuals, people want text information, people want station information. So we have approached that by saying, well, we have two delivery paths. We have DAB digital radio, which is able to transmit digital information over the air, albeit there are some constraints on that which vary from country to country. And then we have IP, which is available to an increasing number of devices and cars. And we should look at those as two different delivery systems, but with one standard application. So the way we do that is we define an application.
Just a very, very short reminder of time, okay?
Yeah,
so we have some, because I see questions coming in and it would be a pity if we
did. That's great.
Thank you.
We are implemented in production vehicles now. We are seeing a lot of growth. The number of countries that are adopting radio DNS is growing, and the number of radio stations that are providing data and the number of manufacturers that are using it is growing as well. I talked about our technical standards. I talked about our open nature. That is how we work. Everybody who is involved with radio DNS collectively forms our standards, and that diversity is our huge strength because we can look at so many different potential use cases. Very quickly, what we don't do, as I say, we don't provide services, we don't hold any metadata, we don't impose controls, we don't have any contracts. Those are the things we don't do. The last thing I'll end with is, because we do virtually nothing in this space, the only thing that we do is we run a DNS server. And that DNS server is what links broadcast and IP. And as an indication of the growth of radio DNS, in the last year, we've seen the number of registrations in our DNS server, which is a proxy for the number of radio stations involved, increased by 41%. So we're seeing some really significant growth in people using our standards. So our recommendation is use standards. They will help you. We recommend, if you're buying or building technology, to use our standards. And that one standard will support a big diversity of devices and sources. So I have not been able to see the questions. So I am going to switch into a mode where I can see them. And I will look forward to answering some of them.
Well, thank you, Nick. It's fantastic how open standards and harmonization with DAB+ make sure that the hybrid experience can be optimized. And before I go into any further, there is a question here. I'll pick it up for you. The idea of radio DNS is great, but is this kind of logic at the connection between broadcast technology and IP-based technology something which listeners do asking after? They're used to get their content when they want to have when they want to have it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you probably read the question. I don't see any possibilities to this new listening experience. So please respond how radio DNS.
I guess briefly, the other thing that radio DNS can do is it can make the switch between linear radio consumption and on-demand consumption much easier for consumers to do. So it's possible for a broadcaster to recommend other things that you might listen to, kind of Amazon-style recommendations related to the live radio program that you're listening to now. So if you want to dive deeper, you can dive deeper if the broadcaster has provided that content or something that's associated with it, or even just other things. Actually, tangentially, maybe you're not enjoying the current program and you want to listen to something completely different. We provide the tool set for broadcasters to provide other destinations based off live listening. So we think that's a huge benefit for people to explore new radio listening. Thank
you, Nick. Thank you. Now, if your question is not answered, it will be answered or via email, because we keep track of them. And now we have two new speakers from different parts of Radio Player. Lawrence Harrison, Director of Automotive Partnerships Radio Player Worldwide, and Andrea Heydrich, Managing Director of Radio Player Austria.
Thank you, Jackie. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to WorldDAB and EBU for inviting us to speak. As Jackie said, I'll be joined by my colleague Andrea, who's Managing Director of Radio Player Austria, for the presentation. And we're delighted to be talking about this today because the main theme of the event, keeping radio strong in the car through hybrid radio with DAB+ at its heart, really is now the main aim of Radio Player. It's our core aim, focusing on keeping radio strong in the car. And sorry, it's not quite moving on. Yeah. There you go. So hopefully that's moved on. And the good news is that we've had some success already. We've got some experience in this area because we're already approaching 1 million cars on roads today with hybrid radio and DAB+ at its heart. And that's through our collaboration and partnership with Volkswagen Group and previously the fantastic team at Audi, which is now Car Software Org. And we're really proud of that partnership. And the number of cars on Europe's roads powered by Radio Player will continue to grow because earlier on this week, we were delighted and proud to announce a brand new partnership with Bmw Group. And starting next year, they'll be using Radio Player to power their broadcast experience with DAB+ at its heart. And we're very proud of that. I think the unique thing about Radio Player in this space is the organisation itself and our model. So we are a non-profit organisation and we are backed only by broadcasters. And for automotive companies in this space, that means they can trust the fact that we're acting strategically to keep radio strong in the dashboard and really focusing on the user experience. And for us, that means hybrid radio. These are just a few of our broadcasters. There are many more. But that broadcaster-backed model is important to us and increasingly important to the car manufacturers. I'm just going to hand over to Andrea now to talk a bit about the organisation and how we work with the car manufacturers.
Yeah, thank you, Lawrence. I have the chance and great opportunity to speak to you all on behalf of the broadcasters and their advantages of being part of the Radio Player family. Radio Player Austria is a partner of Radio Player worldwide. With the car industry powerhouses in France, Sweden, and the Netherlands who joined last year, the total number of Radio Player countries is now 14. Radio Player is unique in the market as it works on a non-profit basis and has been specifically adapted for the broadcasters in each country. There are common technical standards for all the backend systems. Radio Player has always been clear with our broadcasters, stakeholders, and car companies that establishing a great hybrid radio experience in the car, broadcast, and IP is our top priority. Radio Player is engaging with all options to achieve our hybrid goal. Radio Player also works collaboratively with broadcasters and car companies to ensure that radio is strong and prominent in the dashboards of future cars. There are 3 main activities that Radio Player undertakes to achieve that aim. First, providing official quality broadcaster metadata. Second, providing support to help build and design a great hybrid radio. And third, creating high-value partnerships with car companies and automotive stakeholders. Metadata is the key to the success of Radio Player. Radio Player ensures that only official station metadata provided directly by the broadcasters is used on car dashboards. Our metadata includes things like station names, logos, now playing information with track and artist name, artist images, and podcast and on-demand content. We make it available to car companies through the worldwide Radio Player API, known as the WRAPI. This is very important as broadcasters get annoyed and frustrated by third-party providers who use unofficial metadata that can be incorrect and that it can be used without your permission to earn money. Our broadcasting partners are involved and it is ensured that we can plan for the future dashboards. The video you see playing now is of our metadata powering the brilliant Audi VW hybrid radio that is already available. Radio Player is also working hard to continually improve the quality of now playing information by working with playout system manufacturers and broadcasters to increase the number of radio stations able to regularly send this level of granular metadata. Each country, therefore, has its own country manager within the Radio Player network. He or she acts as an interface between Radio Player worldwide and the broadcasters in their own country. In this role, I also work intensively on the exact transmission of the metadata by the broadcasters. These are regularly checked together with the technical support team in Austria and is always up to date. This is an essential point for the good cooperation with the automotive industry. As a country manager, I'm also in a constant dialogue with Radio Player worldwide regarding marketing and technical developments. These are then passed on directly by me to the broadcasters in Austria, and international industry developments are also communicated to the relevant media. Over to you, Lawrence.
Thanks, Andrea. So once a car company has decided to use the RAPI and partner with us, there's a number of other ways that we can work with them. So first of all, we want to help them build a fantastic hybrid radio. And we do that through technical support offered via our new Radio Player Developer Hub, which has code libraries, documentation, use cases, and also the staff internally in Radio Player have huge experience to help integrate the RAPI into a car manufacturer's system, but also to help build a fantastic hybrid experience. And once we've done that, we also want to help the user interface design. We think it's really important to demonstrate what a great hybrid experience can look like. And what you see on the right is an example of our reference radio user interface. And we make that available to any partners who want to use it or just to borrow ideas from. But those kind of demonstrations are really important for us. And how do we put DAB Plus at the heart of a hybrid experience? There's a few ways in which we do that. Obviously, having DAB Plus bearer IDs and the RAPI is important for a hybrid experience. We also advise our partners to default to the DAB Plus signal first for the robust coverage and choice, and also to take metadata from DAB Plus first before they look anywhere else for it. And then finally, we're big supporters of the WorldDAB user experience guidelines. So we use those guidelines to inform elements of our partnership agreement around the user interface. And when those things all come together, it can be quite exciting. And at the end of last year, we demonstrated our hybrid radio app in Android Automotive operating system. This was one of the first apps out there. You'll hear about more, I'm sure. But it's really important to us for two reasons. We know that Android Automotive is gaining traction amongst car companies. So we wanted to learn about the technology so that we can help advise, inform Google about how the standard radio experience can be improved and made a hybrid one. And we also have the app available, which is there to use for our automotive partners. I can't play the demo today. If you're interested, please let me know. And then finally, the partnership value exchange between Radio Player and our broadcasters and the car manufacturers is really important. So we offer, because we're a non-profit organisation, free or at-cost services, official broadcast metadata, design and technology support for hybrid radio. And in return, we ask the car manufacturers to work with us on creating a great hybrid radio user interface with DAB Plus at its heart. And importantly, we also want them to collaborate with us on creating a future vision for radio's presence in the dashboard and really work on delivering and developing new features and functionality. So just to finish, I think Andrea's got a few words.
Yes, thank you. In my opinion, the work on automotive is vital for Radio Player and all broadcasters. So therefore, we want Radio Player to become the world's best metadata and hybrid radio partner, live and on demand for car manufacturers by delivering first, rich metadata directly from the broadcasters. Second, technology and design support helping to build and design the hybrid radio. And third, partnerships with car companies. And representative voice is needed for broadcasters when collaborating with car companies. And that is what Radio Player can do for all broadcasters all over the world. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Well, you're not finished yet. Thank you, Lawrence and Andrea. Right. No, it's good to see the digital broadcast through DAB Plus in the heart of hybrid radio, and due to the collaborations of thousands of stations within Radio Player worldwide, car manufacturer have easy access to radio and its metadata directly from the source. Now for any questions, please remember to type your questions into the Q&A box below. I have a question from Christian Simon here. Does Radio Player use the open standards from Radio DNS? Andrea Lawrence.
No, absolutely. So we use the open standards to help gather the metadata from our broadcasters. We were one of the, I think if the first organization to use and adopt the new client ID Radio DNS standard for publishing the metadata securely. We're also members now, I'm a new member indeed, of the Radio DNS steering board. And we have colleagues on the technical committee as well. And I believe we're one of the largest providers of metadata through the Radio DNS project logo stand as well. So absolutely, firm supporters of Radio DNS and very much using the standards.
I have another question for Andrea. You work with Radio Player broadcasters directly in Austria. And can you tell me a bit more about how that works and how it helps improve the Radio Player offer to car companies?
Yeah, sure. I think here it's a good opportunity to talk about continually ensuring that the metadata is up to date and of the best quality for the car dashboards, and also that you provide a direct link to broadcasters, which means quick feedback and collaboration with car companies developing the radio future in the car. So I think that's the important thing.
Okay. And Lawrence, Radio Player already has, you just shown, has some car company partners, but do car companies generally understand the different, she's called it, Radio Player partner model?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. So I think we probably are a bit unique in this area due to our non-profit status and backed by the broadcasters. To be honest with you, it does take some explaining to automotive partners to sort of understand that. And we do need to repeat it a few times in terms of the fact there are certainly around the costs and there's no license for the metadata and things like that. But I think people are starting to understand that now. And the thing that's really encouraging is that some of the car companies are really interested in that sort of collaborative model, building that future vision with the broadcasters. And that's really important to us. So yeah, it's a good question. It does take some explaining to really land what we're about. But I think people are starting to understand that now.
Good. Well, I see no more questions from the audience. So we're going up next. Xperia, Joe D'Angelo, Senior Vice President, Broadcast Radio, Xperia.
And thank you. And of course, my presentation is not where it should be to start. So give me a second to reset this and we'll get started. Apologies, I promise I will still finish on time. And here we go. Okay, so to start with, a little bit about Xperia. We have a long history in supporting radio stations, over 20 years of developing apps and studio systems. In fact, we're partners with Radio Player on the app side of the business. And we support radio stations really around the world. In addition, we have about 20 years experience working directly with car manufacturers and their tier 1 suppliers, deploying a whole range of technologies in the vehicles, but with a particular focus on broadcast radio. Because of where we sit in those ecosystems between broadcast and the auto industry, we have developed a platform, a hybrid radio platform called AutoStage. We think it's critical that broadcasters and car companies have a level of independence to respond against the threats in the dash from big tech. This platform is open to all broadcasters. It's free of charge. There's no required investment. The data flows through the system, ensuring that broadcasters are constantly in control of the end user experience. And I want to talk a little bit about DAB at the heart of our system in the context of our first commercial launch, which happened this year with Daimler. You can see this Daimler vehicle has 5 screens. Every one of those screens provides an opportunity to interact with radio, control radio, and enjoy radio content. So the need for a hybrid system in this vehicle is really, really obvious. But at the core of any hybrid radio system is broadcast. And what we learned through this development and deployment is there are really 4 themes, and they'll echo a lot of what you heard from Lawrence. You need broadcast coverage, you need a reliable service, you need to provide support for rapid commercialization and deployment, and also ongoing quality assurance. And then the platform has to enable continuous innovation. And Nick even spoke a little bit about the extension of radio DNS and how that can support innovation. So we were required as part of this support launch to have coverage in 48 countries. And that required us to have content from 48,000 radio stations, no small feat, and supporting all broadcast standards, analog, DAB, HD radio, and CDR. This is what our country coverage looked like on day 1 for the launch. What was really interesting is the broad support for DAB services. Again, because of our long history of supporting DAB broadcasters with our division, All In Media, out of London, we had a very good understanding of how the systems were designed, architected, and had very good relationships with broadcasters, as well as content aggregators such as Radio Player. And as a result, we were able to pull together content from all the services, almost all the services. I heard from the WorldDAB office yesterday, there are about 3,000 DAB services available around the world. And we currently have support for about 2,700 of them across these stations. And this is what our DAB coverage looks like from a country perspective. Really critical that broadcast service is there. And developing or aggregating all this content was not easy, and we didn't do it alone. We did it through partnerships, we did it through collaboration directly with broadcasters. We leveraged open standards like radio DNS, and we are what we consider format agnostic. However a broadcaster wants to send us content, we're able to receive it. And we actually have a team around the world of about 100 people that are constantly looking at the interface and the data sources from broadcasters to ensure the health and the completeness of that service. Once we get the content from the broadcasters, we also enable the addition of our TiVo music metadata. We recently merged with TiVo, so now we have an internal catalog of about 45 million tracks. And then we also enhance the user experience with additional content like song lyrics for that backseat karaoke experience, artist bios, et cetera. It's really quite an extensible platform. The end result is a global user experience that is both accurate, consistent, complete in its delivery of metadata, compliant with all the obligations and content use expectations of the broadcasters, as well as meeting the OEM requirements. And here you can see just some examples of the service, live service around the world with some DAB stations. Broadcast is critical, and hybrid radio definitely is the future of broadcast radio, but it requires support. And much like others on the call, we provide ongoing support for both product development, field testing, and then most importantly, once the products are deployed, we're constantly monitoring the DAB, the analog, the HD radio services, as well as the IP services to ensure that they are appropriately harmonized. The result is that we get product to market very quickly. We launched our first product after about 18 months of development, which is very quick in the automotive space. And we have a long history of this. We have certified over 3,500 different radio designs that go into those 100 million vehicles that I described. We also work directly with the tier ones, and obviously Android Automotive is an emerging platform that we're all going to have to deal with. And we have very good history of working with our partners to develop fully integrated broadcast solutions. Broadcast has to be the first step in any hybrid solution. And that's a real area of risk actually around the Android automotive platform. And Ben mentioned the Nab Pilot Project. This is a project that we're proud to be part of, where broadcasters from around the world are leading the communication and the advocacy for really world-class, fully featured digital and analog broadcast support within the Android automotive operating system. And again, that is critical. If you don't have broadcast, you don't have hybrid. And there is a real risk that car companies may start to de-emphasize broadcast radio in these new operating systems and the new connected cars. And we are adamantly committed to ensuring that that does not happen. The Dash is also hyper competitive right now. You see big tech coming in with new services and new features all the time. And one of the beautiful things about our platform is it is capable of delivering ongoing innovation and new services, even to platforms that are already in the field. So we've announced already that this year we will be introducing events into the system. This will talk about local events. Hopefully when COVID's over, we'll actually get back to live music. And events are going to be a real part of that system, informing the listeners about what's going on in their markets. We're adding lyrics. And then we have 3 additional features that we can't talk about publicly, but will be rolled out in the second, third, and fourth quarters of this year to upgrade the service of the vehicles already on the road. So at the core, any hybrid radio system has to start with broadcast, and DAB has to be the core of that. The commitment and the progress in Europe on both the infrastructure side and the automotive side has been extremely impressive, and has to maintain retain that core offering. But unlike broadcast that just kind of works, it's a very reliable technology. Hybrid radio is not so simple and requires someone, an entity, an organization to look after the services to ensure that reliability, to provide the support and ensure the continuous innovation. So that's a little bit about what Xperia have learned in fielding our first commercial implementation. Broadcast is at the core, but it's just the beginning of a hybrid radio service. So hopefully I stuck to time there, and
well, you did
I'm
pretty
happy to
well.
take any questions.
You did pretty well, Joe. Thank you. It's
Okay.
great to hear how broadcast is the heart of hybrid radio, and how Xperia offers, through its years of experience, technology solutions for broadcasters, automotive and music partners. Now for questions, I got one here from Gregor Putz. How is Xperia supporting radio DNS?
Well, we're not actually a publisher out of the DTS AutoStage platform. We do support radio DNS in Australia, actually, with our radio app platform that we manage for Commercial Radio Australia. So we are, I would say, probably the second largest publisher of radio DNS. Maybe Pluxbox beats us out by a little. They're doing quite a lot as well. But the AutoStage platform that I just described ingests content in those various formats, and we do use radio DNS as one of our ingredients in the system.
Okay, and can you elaborate a bit more on how you achieved coverage in so many markets so quickly, and the role some other members of the panel played in that
Sure.
process?
Sure. As you saw from that one slide, we aggregate content directly from broadcasters, from open standards, and from technology partners. And really, at least 3 or 4 of them are on this call. Obviously, Radio Player is a big partner in Europe and Canada. Pluxbox is a big partner as well. They have a lot of customers where they publish content on behalf of those broadcasters like NPO, and RTVE directly into our system. We work with Xavier as well. And obviously, like Lawrence, I used to be a board member of Radio DNS. I spent, I think, 4 years on. So we've worked closely with Nick and some others in the organization to utilize that. So we really are almost, I'd say, content agnostic. Broadcasters have full discretion how they service the content. And in many cases, they want to use open standards. They want to use the radio player platform. They want to use technology platforms like Fluxbox. And like I said, we are agnostic, and we really work very closely with all those organizations to meet that coverage needs of our customers.
Great. Well, thank you. And this brings us to the next speaker in our lineup today. And that is, you already mentioned him, Joe, Cas Adriani, Chief Technology Officer of Fluxbox. Is he still?
Is he on mute?
I was searching for the mute button that was lost. I'm here. Thank you very much, Jackie, for the introduction. I'm Caspar Adriani, the CTO of Fluxbox and Metadata Radio, and would like to give a small presentation about brand awareness and how to deal with it in the DAB metadata spectrum. I would like to give my presentation a little more about the why and how to solve this, and less about the technology, how to do it. Maybe first an introduction about Fluxbox. Fluxbox is an IT service company specialized in radio production environments. And we have more than 15 years experience with clients all over the world. We host solutions such as Radio Manager, a SaaS production tool, and Metadata Radio, which is a distribution service for radio stations to make sure that their information is up to date on all receivers. We are like a service provider in it and really host the radio DNS data, like the logos and the right files, and try to make an easy system that is very easy to use to register yourself. With this presentation, I would like to show the importance of good radio metadata, what it does mean for your station, and how to improve it in a few easy steps. The world of radio transmission and metadata is not what it is anymore. There was a time that you only have an audio stream and simple RDS metadata, and nowadays you can do much, much more. As you hear today in this panel discussion, we have a lot of new solutions. We got hybrid solutions, IP-only solutions, and there is a lot of ways how to put the metadata in the signal and extend it. For example, if we look at the DAB with dynamic labels for slideshow, logos, EPG, and of course, there's much more possibilities if you look about the other solutions that are out there. With so much new technologies, we see that broadcasters are often a little lost about how to connect to everything and how to do that. So what we try to do with Metadata Radio is to make a solution around it that you can, with an easy registration, solve everything. Some IP and hybrid solutions work out of the box in Metadata Radio. So like Radio DNS, this is even free for the smaller broadcasters. And with a little effort, you can do all the needed information, such as transmission information in your logo, and you can enable Radio DNS, and then it's directly up and running within some DNS registration times. The other part, we also work with the big metadata radio, the big metadata players in the world for the radio, like Xperia and Radio Player. And for that, we're more like a distribution, so you only need to update your logo, for example, one time, and don't need to be in various systems. Good to know we're not taking a big step into the car. We're really like providing the data to these solutions, and they can use it and make this whole world a better place for the radio. For the DAB, of course, we also support the metadata. Especially we're focused on DL+, slideshows, EPG, and logos. And especially the last one I would like to mention and point everybody out how important the logo is on your for your station in the metadata. So together with transmission providers, we can make sure this information is in the DAB signal. It's not as click and ready as a radio DNS, of course. But we do have quite some experience how to make it happen. Also be aware a logo is not the same as a slide that we often see confused if we're talking about the DAB, of course. In the next, I would like to show a short video where it took like 2 minutes. And it explains more about why broadcasters should use logos in, for their stations.
Good morning, everybody. As of today, we have a brand new logo. You can check it out on every platform, even on the display of your car. How great is that? Please let me know what you think and send me a message via the Plugs FM app. You came here 'cause you wanna be a star. John asking, how is it possible that the logo directly showed up on my car display? Well, John, that's the magic of Metadata Radio.
That was it. I hope it was visible and not too lackish. Otherwise, it's always available on YouTube to check it again. Yeah, because it's often not clear which car receiver is using which technology to show your logo. And metadata we often see in the car. Yeah, we often see this like the real world. The problem is once your logo is not in reach in your station list, it's populated with the old or the wrong logo. Listeners have a much harder time to connect all the effort you put in your advertisements on the road, for example, like the image in this slide, to the most important choice when they turn on the radio, choosing your station from the list. So as we often say in Plugsbox, your brand strategy is as strong as your weakest link. If people see an old logo or no logo at all in the station list, it's hard for them to connect all the effort you put in this advertisement for this important moment, choosing the station. So that was my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if you have any questions, and feel free to contact me afterwards if there are any other questions. And if you're a broadcaster, then take some time to go to Metadata Radio and at least upload your logo and enable radio DNS. So starting this world up and running.
Good advice, Cas. Also great to hear how Plugsbox is offering low threshold solutions for broadcasters to maintain their metadata and to distribute the information about radio stations to the many standards and directories there are today. Now, for any questions, please type below. And otherwise, I do have a question for you, Cas. Could you explain why DAB metadata like logos are important for broadcasters?
Yeah, like I said, I think the station listing is the most important part. I do hear a lot of questions about slides and logos, and often it's not clear that it's a clear distinguish about the two technologies. The logos you can do on a much lower bit rate, spread it out, receivers often caching it. So if you get in your car, you turn on your receiver, you see a list of all the stations and see your station logo next to it. If we're talking about slides, this is another technology that's often in a receiver displayed on the same position, not in the station list, but once you're selecting your station. But that's more for dynamic information. We often do it for which program is on, like on the EPG data, or of course the now on air, or advertisement, or more about the events that are going to happen. But it's more forgettable information, not storable information. And logos is an easier step to make sure that all the receivers can identify your station with the right logo.
So it does not cannibalize on the kilobits that you have in the quality of your sound?
It always does a little because you're using your bandwidth to do that, but you can put it on a very low bandwidth. It are only the sizes of the logos that are in different formats. It takes a while before the receiver have it, but it's fine that it takes a couple of hours, even for a small image, to distribute. Once a receiver has this image, it will store it and only refresh once you have a new logo. And it doesn't need to be instant if you change.
So that device doesn't, so that the user doesn't even notice that this is happening on the background somewhere.
No. For the end user, they just see a logo next to your station list. If the receiver supports it.
And how do you find metadata.radio?
Very easy. It's a website, also often commonly not known. But if you press metadata.radio in your address bar in your browser, you get there.
And you get more info there?
There's more info, and you can register there. There's a register button on the top right.
And that's for free?
It's for free for smaller stations. It's clearly explained on the homepage about what the limits are, what the free tier is, and what the premium tier is, and what
Okay.
the default one is.
So for basics, if you're not into metadata yet, that's the place to go.
Yeah, it's like a project logo for Radio DNS. Is a setup that you can upload your logos. You can put in all your bearers. You got the service following. You got the logo with through the Radio DNS. So this is of course not in the DAB spectrum because this is not something we can do IP only. And for all the other connections, there are clear explanations how to do it. Then you can always contact us, of course.
Okay, is this a new question from Gregor? I'm not sure how you're supporting Radio DNS, only ingesting or also updating to Radio DNS.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
How are you supporting Radio DNS? Only ingesting or also updating Radio DNS?
No, yeah, we're also a member of the technology group, so we're heavily involved about the standardization. We always try to be, if it's non-breaking, the first one with the new features of Radio DNS and give like a full support, also support various barriers, also the IP bearers, so it's possible to switch, switch over to IP, for example, if the car supports that. And always keep on working, improving it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Now, finally, we're on schedule, by the way. Finally, we have Xavier Filiol, Chief Operating Officer of Radioline. Love your name.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think it's very good to have this conversation because regarding the situation, we absolutely need to have an overview of what our great people today can still innovate, still provide things. And of course, we have plenty of things to present you, but we have a little different background, I would say. So Radioline is a 15 years old company, and we started with Orange. We are based in Paris. We have a very large database of more than 90,000 of stations and podcasts from 130 countries. It's a lot of work to gather all this information and also to create catalogs, local catalogs for the public to get the appropriate content. We also have multi-devices services. We support 10 languages, including Russian and Mandarin. And we have more than 15 partners around the globe. So we are part of a larger group who is involved in healthcare, safety, and well-being. Colgate is one of the main partners, and we have very, very large infrastructure in terms of for the content and services, and it's more than 2,000 employees. Today, since 15 years, we are working on so many services and devices. So you have a little sample of all our partners. Some are telcos, some are, I would say, media group like Canal Plus, so others. So we are covering today mobile, watch, wearables, TV, etc., and covering, of course, a range of OS, of operating system. So we have a worldwide announcement today in preview. It's a surprise for everyone, I hope so. That's Radio Lines app is now pre-installed in the dashboard with Link & Co. So Link & Co is part of Geely Group, and they decided to choose us as, I would say, the main access to the radio station, which is super important. Like someone said, it's really important to maintain and ensure and direct access to the radio from the first level. So this is the dashboard. This is a new OS Android Automotive. So very proud and happy to share it with you today. But on the hybrid side, we done a video because until now I presented our IP services. And when we joined WorldDAB Group, the idea behind that was we need to mix hybrid and IP for so many reasons that have been said before. So this is a summary in 1 minute in video. So today, what we provide is two applications, hybrid radio application. One is HTML5 based. We presented it with an Xperia last year at CES. And the other one is under Android Automotive. We did it with Panasonic Automotive System Europe since last year in May. So I think the main discussion is about the UX as well, because our approach is we are coming from IP world. So the full IP UX is our, I would say, background and environment. And the idea is to fit in with, I would say, the expectation of the partners, of the OEMs. So discussing with them, we see that there is different approach and strategy. You see before, people, you know, like Link & Co or Tesla, which have nothing to do with broadcast, okay? But there is a lot of OEMs that still think that hybrid should be the way. And we work with them in two ways, I would say. The first one is it's broadcast first for saving IP data consumption, for example, or another group of OEMs just asking for backup. Because as you know, in many countries, 3G, 4G, and sometimes 5G is not good enough. So it's super important to also offer an optimized signal coverage. But at the end of the day, we trigger the sources from the sources. So this is the only one, I would say, main UX presentation of the services, but the sources behind are different. So you see here it could be FM, DAB, or IP. We mix it depending on the rules of the partner, and we present it with different menu, like you can see, favorite, local station, podcast, and newscast. So what we provide also, I think we try to create services with reliable innovation. We don't offer gadgets. What we do is, for example, we decided to partner with AudioBurst, which is bringing a very interesting experience and new content. So what they do, they are taking, you know, news information, and with artificial AI, they can slice the information by topic. So for example, you have the lists, like a feed of information that have been taken from the live stream with, of course, the rights and the agreement with content provider. And this is what you can have.
And a Japanese billionaire announcing a contest to take a trip to the moon. Here's Carmen Roberts.
Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa says he...
Hundreds of girls kidnapped from a boarding school in northern Nigeria are free again. Regional officials deny paying any ransom.
We offer also a very important and expected innovation. This is the seamless cross device. Because, like I said, we create a kind of ecosystem with so many devices. And now we have partners like Huawei. We are working on seamless cross device scenario, meaning that you just have to pair different devices with a QR code, for example, and then you can continue your listening experience from a mobile, for example. You get your favorites synchronized. You start from the point of listening in the podcast, for example, or you listen to the latest radio station on the other device. So this feature.
Xavier, just
yes?
a little flag here that you are already in the Q&A time.
Okay, sorry. Just two other things. So there is a voice command. I think everybody knows what it's about, so we integrate them as well. And we offer a monitoring tool for content providers, which is super important for us, is that content providers can follow, can control, can update. They get the statistics per partner from cumulated time, etc. And of course, you have the personal support with a chat box if you need the support. So this is the end of my presentation. Some of our partners in the automotive, and be happy to be in touch with you and answer to your question. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Xavier. It's good to hear about all your work that you do for the automotive companies and keeping radio prominent and alive in the dashboard out of an app perspective on broadcasts. It's nice to see. I have a question here from the audience. Is there a chart for broadcasters to be part of the radio line offering? Chart?
Of course not. Of course not. And we are also sharing when the stations are okay. We ask permission to put an audio pre-roll at the beginning, at launch of the stream. And we share the advertising revenue. So for pre-roll, we ask permission, we sign an amendment of our agreement, and we share the revenue from the advertising.
Okay, and another question. In your opinion, what should be the next improvement in DAB+?
Yeah, we are talking about innovation in the IP world. I think it's super important because we have plenty of big players like Deezer, Spotify. They put a lot of money of innovation. We need to evolve. But we need also to evolve on the broadcast part because we are mixing both technology. I know that a lot of people are working on that, but I would like to see, I would say, less compression if possible. Because on the DAB signal, it's AAC, 92 kilobit per second. So now the standards are higher, much higher. So the idea, is it possible to have less compression and better signal? I think it's absolutely key. Otherwise, you know, there is some services that deliver quality, CD quality, and their on-demand services. So this is one of my questions. And the other, which is super important, we are talking a lot about immersive sound and environment. And I think that multi-channel and binaural are also super important. So I don't know if the broadcast can bring that, but I'm pretty sure that broadcasts have remained really innovative and can bring in very large improvements. But because we are using both signal, we need also to push everybody on the top.
Yeah, quality is very important. It's very, very important. How DAB is perceived by the public. Well, thank you. And I want to say a big thank you to all of our presenters. Radio is still the strongest medium across the world, and DAB+ brings more choice at lower costs and is more environmentally friendly. Through hybrid, all the people in the panel make sure that radio is still the most popular choice in the dashboard and will stay that way for many years to come. Through collaboration of radio and automotive, the driver is served with the best listening experience, one that keeps getting better. And which is great for the listener, great for the broadcasters, and great for the car companies. So just a reminder, this session will be available in full on the WorldDAB YouTube channel. And for more information on all the work of WorldDAB and its members, please go to worlddab.org. Thank you all for joining these last 2 hours. And it was great we could meet together virtually. Thanks for your time and energy, and we hope to see you soon in person. Thanks.